where it's subtle, but it's complicated, it's nuanced, like bold visual, like, the color palette really resonated with me. And so these pieces, the Generative Towards Sculpture series, was a series of 10 across a few months. This last year, I accumulated 4 out of the 10. I don't believe any of the rest are likely ever to go for sale. I know Art Gnome has another one. A couple other collectors have vaulted them. So, and to be honest, like, these are some of my favorite NFTs I own. Like, regardless of chain, regardless of anything, like, I put them as my banner for a reason. To me, they're just gorgeous.
They're banging.
Yeah, and so I'd seen Iskra had actually printed out, like, I don't know what they were, like 18 by 24s of them. But like, ideally, I would like to like really blow them up and do like fine art prints, because this is something that I would love to hang around the house.
So sick. VGF, I got the secret sauce when it comes to doing physicals. I can't spill it on stream, but I can give it to you off the cuff. But I got a gallery making reproductions for me on canvas with paint. I feel like these because she can probably get you a really high res photo that they can, or JPEG or whatever image file that they can use to do it. And I feel like if you could feel the texture of the paint with these, that'd be incredible. But I mean, these are unbelievable, man. I think these are screaming for a really big 8 foot tall print or canvas,
I love these too.
That would be something else.
Yeah, it's like I almost imagine if they were printed off, it feels like it would have to be in 3D. Like, that's the way that it looks to me, like that it would be in 3D. Like, it would almost be like a slight sculpture on top of the paint. So that's super cool. Okay, so that's an artist you really like. Are they only on Tezos, or are they on ETH as well, or anywhere else?
I believe she's only on Tezos.
Cool.
I could be mistaken, but there are quite a few artists that have kind of played both sides. I believe she may only be on Tezos, or if she did do a drop on ETH, it was fairly limited.
Cool. Got it.
But yeah, like actually, I think it's still in my handle. The bird, we like the birds and the worms, the Bird and Worm Society. If you know, you know.
Nice. I don't know. I'm out of that loop, dude.
It started kind of as a so Art Gnome, Jason Bailey had kind of seeded it. It was basically a mashup of collectors of Iskra and a Japanese artist. I can never pronounce his name. Kabibi. But anyway, so there was a very small overlap of collectors of both of their works, affectionately referred to as the birds for Iskra and the worms for Kabibi. I apologize. I'm probably butchering that all over the place, but so the Bird and Worm Society came out of the collectors of, like, it was basically just kind of like this small niche group of like generative art appreciators. And it's kind of like grown from there. It's pretty cool.
I love that. So in terms of Tezos in general, like, where do you see things headed with that chain? Is the community growing? Is it getting stronger, or is the environmental lessening of narrative for narrative?
To be honest,
like how's that all playing out?
To be honest, I am not the biggest fan of like Tezos as a chain, or as like the Tezos Foundation. I think their narrative of like hashtag clean NFTs actually did a lot of harm to NFTs overall. That they were like, these are clean NFTs and the other ones are therefore dirty.
The sales pitch.
Yeah. And I see what they were doing. I just wasn't a big fan of it. the opposite side of that being that like the artists on Tezos are what took me there, and the artist community on Tezos is spectacular. And so like for a like it typically has more of like an edition type culture to it. Like editions are much more broadly embraced in the Tezos scene than they typically seem to be on ETH. And it's typically like a lot more approachable in comparison to some of the valuations that we've seen on ETH. And there isn't so much of a flipping culture. Like if there is, you know, it's for marginal, you know, gains, and it's people trying to do those like mint it for a Tez, flip it for 3 kind of like quick flips and stuff, or it's very, very sizable gains after an artist has reached some, you know, momentum. But a lot of people just accumulating because they appreciate and want to support independent artists. So to me, that was kind of like what brought me there, and what has kept me there is the approachability and the kind of like, again, that kind of casino metaphor of like, if I have enough fun and I can support these independent creators, that's enough, and like that's enough for me. And then if it happens to appreciate, you know, even better.
Yeah, I love that. That's the way, and it's interesting too. I'm just like you in the way that I never collected art before NFTs, right? And then this has allowed me to kind of enter into that world for sure. That there have been some, you know, pretty decent sized sales on Tezos though, right? Like it's not just all small amounts. There have been some big ones, right?
Oh yeah, no, if you, especially on like FX Hash, which has been kind of like the art blocks for lack of better analogy, but it's like the art blocks for Tezos, you know, generative art collections, garden monoliths.
Zancan, dude, I've been seeing this guy everywhere, and I don't own anything from this, and I want one so bad. Do you?
I have one or two of his like broader editions, but they very quickly escaped my price of acquisition. So yeah, I mean, some of his pieces just been going absolutely crazy. I think he has this like interesting intersection of like having that broader appeal of like, this is nature, and it's beautiful. It like has kind of like a broad general appeal, and then it has like such intricate nuance to like all of his series that for like the generative art appreciator, like they can get into like all of the nuance and detail of what makes him such a spectacular artist. And so it's like this elevation of like easily consumed and beautiful to look at, and technically very sound and like gorgeous. So I think that's kind of what set him apart from kind of hitting this like crossover where I feel like a lot of other people from ETH and other chains have seen him as kind of like this, like using the reference like as this monolith or kind of like a generative art namesake.
This is incredible art. If it's this is generative art.
This is generative art.
This is crazy. He's posting $30,000 plus sales on Tezos. So that's nuts for generative art. I mean, for this to be generative is incredible.
Mm-hmm. No, it's absolutely like beautiful one. And I think that the fact that it has like that nature element to it makes it very broadly desirable. Like I think with a lot of generative or programmatic art, there is this kind of like a sense of abstract or where it's kind of a niche audience. versus this, I think almost anyone can view it or consume it and find an appreciation for it that like it's almost like objectively beautiful. And I think that has given him kind of like put him up on this little bit of a pedestal. I do think some of his valuations have been kind of inflated by the ridiculous momentum that he's gotten, but I think that that's kind of like accumulation of how much, you know, success he has received for like the pattern of ridiculously high caliber work he's put out over the last, you know, however long, 2 years.
I just have so much regret. I've just been seeing images on Twitter for months and thinking, I need to go check it out. This looks pretty cool. I need to go check it out. And I never did. And just now I'm looking at the prices and realizing, yeah, I definitely missed the, you know, the discovery portion of this artist. And there's been, I'm pretty sure there's big names that have already collected him as well, right? That he's kind of the cat's out of the bag, even though he may not be like really well known on ETH. I feel like there's a lot of people on ETH that do know who he is, and that some big time collectors that are picking up his work.
There was some like big time whales that like made the leap over explicitly to buy
For
some
him.
of like this caliber work.
That's sick.
Look at this one. I mean, this I've heard the name a bunch of times, Zancan. This is the first time I've seen the work, and for this to be generative, bananas, completely bananas.
And so, yeah, I mean, there definitely is some of that like higher echelon. Like I think when you're talking about 30, you know, even $10,000+ works, it doesn't matter what chain they're on. Like that's a caliber, like a caliber, a tier above. Like that is out of the realm of possibility for most, you know, consumer audiences. That's when you're getting into like some pretty like savvy collecting.
And that's in a bear market.
Yeah. And so like he has become a little bit of a polarizing figure in the Tezos community. I don't think this is at fault of his own, but more so a reflection of like how the market has received him. But I think it really is just a testament to the caliber of his work, and that it is like objectively beautiful.
Interesting. What's the polarizing thing? Is it just that he's making so much money that people are mad about, or why is he polarizing?
Yeah, just that like he's become a little bit of this like that there is a little bit of this outside perception that he's this pillar of you know, Tezos, and this artist that can kind of be a referred to or looked at as this kind of mainstay, or like, you know, I'm trying to think of like the way
word. The way that it seems like it's like he's becoming mainstream, which is not like the Tezos way. You know what I mean? Like it's like that's such an indie vibe over there, and he's getting so big that that it's like people are looking at him and saying he's like this big time artist. Is that
or
like
more
that?
so individually? I think that it's like he has reached that because certain people have kind of like latched on to the movement, or like latched onto his momentum. And like there were a bunch of like ETH speculators or whales that just jumped in because they saw so much price action. And that like there are, quite frankly, there's a lot of otherwise spectacular artists that have not received that even in their own right have gotten a lot of success and a lot of momentum, that haven't gotten that kind of like ridiculous inflated valuations. Not that his work doesn't justify those prices. Like I think that it is spectacular, but it did kind of receive this pump.
Yeah.
That, you know, I mean, even when you look at the valuations and the trading volume, it's head and shoulders above everything else.
Welcome to the world of art, right? As I've learned more, reading that $12 million, $12 million Stuffed Shark book, it's like, wow, okay, the collectors and the auction houses and the art dealers matter 100%. They matter because they're the ones that can crown people. And it's hard to say because art is art. So, what is objectively better than something else? But at a certain level, somebody does need to just bless you, right? And then you become huge. And so I definitely can see the resentment there from some artists, because when I look at Tezos, there's so much talent over there.
Mhm.
And it's hard because somebody asked me today in the Nifty Discord, they're like, "Hey, is this fine art?" And my only response was, "Is it expensive? If so, then yes." Like that's all I'm gonna say that's gonna define it or even pretend to. But I just feel like it's a tough thing that happens in the art world.
Well, and like I'm far from, an art critic or like art historian. But one thing with like this tokenization and, the kind of speculation on any and all of these assets is like what gives any of it any value is the consensus that it is, of value. If enough, people believe it to be of that kind of caliber, that valuation, then it is.
Yeah.
And
it's like Bitcoin. There you go. It's the same thing. It
and
really
so really I think of NFTs as like leverage on the underlying cryptocurrency. It like one utility and one use case is being able to, attach a file or, an image to this token to represent digital ownership. But like NFTs as like a technology, I think are really like leverage on the underlying cryptocurrency. So like my underlying thesis and investment thesis has been, stack ETH and stack NFTs as leverage on and as stores of ETH or the other crypto, whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Pio, I noticed there was on the home screen there was William Mapon there, and are you familiar with him, VGF? William Mapon, he's the artist behind Anti-Cyclones. It's right there. It's dragons. Yeah, I want to look at this one because Anti-Cyclone, I almost bought one a few days ago for 6 ETH, and now the floor is almost 9 ETH, and so I'm just and everybody listening to guys on Proof and stuff, they really like William Mapon's work and they think he's an up and comer. And so I just noticed this as well. People have been chatting about dragons and I haven't even looked at it yet. This one's interesting, but I mean, I like Anti-Cyclone more, but I just thought, oh, this is it would be a cool collection to check out.
Well, and when you look at like, I mean, this is obviously appreciated quite a bit already, but when you look at pure like dollar valuations, this is somewhere in the ballpark of like $4,000 or $5,000 US dollars versus like 6-9 ETH, whatever, $15,000. Subjective appreciation of the art aside, there is a level of approachability that Tezos generally has that ETH may not yet. So like a lot of these artists that maybe have, crazy collections or a lot of price action on ETH might still have, some pretty approachable pieces available on Tezos.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Just it's almost like it's an automatic discount sometimes when you just hop over from one chain to the other. And I don't know, maybe there's a little bit of, do you have this? I honestly do have this fear. A lot of people think it might be ridiculous, but after watching, this cycle and learning from previous cycles, what happens if Tezos does not, what happens if the chain stops functioning the way or, doesn't get the funding? What do you think happens if
that's
the chain?
That's a very real concern. That is a risk factor.
Can't you just wrap the stuff though? Wouldn't it just end up wrapped somewhere else?
Potentially, I could see something like a vault system coming to, like I know that there is like Emblem Vault for
and that's
certain tokens to be wrapped on other chains, but
And that's Counterparty. That's not, it was never as mainstream as Tezos is, right? So it's like, if even Counterparty can be wrapped, I figure I wouldn't.
There is Tezos wrapping systems. And I mean,
cool.
like, I think that I know that there was like a John, like JJJJ on, that had a couple of pieces that were on Tezos that were wrapped and brought to Ethereum. But like, in my opinion, if you're like, you need to have a respect for the risk of any of this space, that like any and all of it is risky. And in my, like, again, I'm coming from a place of, if all of this goes to zero, I'm fine. Yeah. So I have like some joy that I take in like the collecting and knowing I'm supporting these artists. And again, that's where like my perspective of where I'm coming from in buying these pieces. And like, if all I have to show for it at the end of the day is like tokens with pretty pictures attached to it, I'm like, that's enough for me. If that is not the perspective that you're coming from, you can probably take, you know, a few layers deeper of, if ETH goes to 5, or like if Tezos goes to 5 cents, it doesn't matter if your art appreciates 1,000%. You might still be out, you know, a ridiculous number of dollars. So that should definitely be, you know, taken into consideration.
Yeah, that's definitely something to think about and consider. I hadn't thought a whole lot about the Tezos price. Is it similar? Does it behave similarly to ETH? Like, if Tezos is volatile, NFTs on Tez don't really, you know, it's not great for the space. Or if it's stable, does it give the market an opportunity to rise? Or does all the art on Tezos still kind of revolve around, or is impacted by what's happening on ETH?
I would say the appreciation of like the token, it reacts very similarly. I forget what like the all-time high was, but it similar in magnitude to like the volatility of ETH. I think it's sitting somewhere like $1.50, between like $1.50 and $2, something like that, currently. But again, to me, it's leverage on the underlying cryptocurrency, and so it should be taken with that grain of salt. Like, if you're going to take gains, like, you should have a management of your treasury or your portfolio of like off ramping enough to cover your tax liability and stuff like that. I know a handful of people that got caught in tax season of like leveraging everything that they had back into more NFTs, and come tax season, they have nothing in the bank to pay their tax bill. So it definitely is something to kind of like weigh into consideration. Like, this was a realm that like I had no, like, this is all coming from like mentors of mine that like had taught me well. Otherwise, like, I may have been in a very similar boat. But thankfully, like, I had much smarter people than I that whispered in my ear and said like, hey, when you take a big sale, you should probably put off ramp some of that and put it aside just in case.
Yeah, that is so wise. Like, I am not in the position where if everything went to zero, I'd be okay. I'll tell you that. I'm definitely, as Nick likes to say, overexposed is the word, but happy to be overexposed. And the one thing I've been thinking more about in the bear market is, at least I'm becoming more and more proud of what's in my wallet, versus in the bull run. It's like there was so much garbage in there that was just there was nothing behind it, nothing that I wanted behind it other than a quick buck, right? And so it feels good to collect art that you really, really like. And that to me is like the most pure utility. Like, it's just, you have it and it's there and it's yours.
If it brings you joy, that is utility. If it makes you feel something,
yes,
that is utility. And like, I mean, as far as like the art goes, other than like my own selfish, like, I want it, so I want to buy it. My kind of thesis with art is like, if I love and appreciate it, then chances are there are other people that will love and appreciate this, or like appreciate this artist's work. And if they keep putting out good work, chances are they'll continue to gain in popularity or exposure or whatever. And number may go up. May, emphasis may. But like I don't like, the selfish part of me is like I've never had exposure to being able to collect this volume of work before. So there is that kind of like childish part of me that is like, I want it, so I bought it.
100%. And I tweeted out something similar today where I was just, the more I think about art and the more, like, I don't know, I'm starting to feel like I'm only 36, but I'm starting to feel like this old man in the NFT space, because everybody's so young. And I'm sitting here thinking, okay, I've got like a family, I got 3 kids. I'm experiencing all these things in life. And the one thing about art that I really appreciate is a lot of art for me, as I'm getting older and maybe a little softer or something, I don't know, but like art captures the like a feeling, and you can apply like your own personal experiences, and the art might remind you of something, right? Or it might, or you might, when something happens in your life, like you might think about a piece of art differently, and it captures some kind of emotion or some kind of feeling that you have. And then you add to that there is scarcity and that they're non-fungible. So they are literally irreplaceable. And to me, that's where I find the thesis of art being so powerful, that's where people say, yeah, it becomes priceless, right? Like it's just such a, I don't know, there's something very special to art as you think more about it, than meets the eye, no pun intended, you know?
Well, and one of the big reasons that I think I gravitated towards like digitally native art, whether it's generative art, programmatic art, or artists, I think XCOPY kind of like is the like face of some of like that digitally native like glitch art.
Yep.
Is that they really can't be collected via any other means. Like you could right click save them, sure, but like buying a print doesn't necessarily reflect the true nature of the work, whether it's like a visualization or a GIF or MP4 or the glitch pieces. It doesn't really like embody the totality of the piece. And so even though you might right click save it, or you might print it out, it's not like a true reflection of the body of the work. And to me, that like stands distinctly aside from fidgetals or traditionally painted that are then tokenized and that kind of work. Not that they don't also have a place here, but it is distinct in my mind because there really is no other way to collect that kind of work.
Yeah, it is the clearest use case and problem that has been solved, in my opinion, with NFTs, is owning a digital piece, like a digital art that there has been no way to truly own it previously. And that is a problem that was literally solved exactly by NFTs. So much other stuff, all these projects that come out, like there's a lot of things where you may or may not have to have an NFT. It's just kind of nice to have it. Whereas when it comes to pure play, digitally native, digital art, there's no other, like, this is the purest and truest way to actually own it. So,
well, that's where I think like NFTs are not only like a technology, but that's where it does kind of overlap into being a medium of art. Is that like there are some NFTs that are just tokenized for the technology, the digital provenance, ownership, etc. But then some of this digitally native art, there is no other way short of like commissioning an artist and having the only copy of it be on like your hard drive, that you could collect that kind of work. And that's where I think we've seen, Beeple, Nest Graphics, some of these otherwise, even in their previous lives, influential and successful artists that then come over into the NFT space and are able to be supported in an entirely different capacity.